Hard on the heels of Chris Bryant calling the proposed legislation of Rishi Sunak and James Cleverly this nonsense and a legal fiction, the Right Honourable Sir Robert Buckland, KCMP, who is on the right of the Conservative Party, came out with the most extraordinary statement. Actually, let's just listen to it.
It's a pleasure to follow the honourable gentleman, and I was very pleased to hear his strong invocation of the fallacy that we live in a separation of powers constitution. We do not. We live in a constitution of checks and balances. We are proud to have an independent judiciary, an independent legal profession underpinning the rule of law, which we are all equal and subject to. We also have a parliament that is supreme. The crown in parliament is in fact the phrase, which is why, like my honourable friend, the member for Bromley and Chislehurst, I take issue with some of the wording in clause 1, but that's by the way. But the principle of comity, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is one that we can ill afford to overlook. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that mutual respect that has to exist between the different arms of the Constitution. This place is sovereign. We derive our sovereignty from the people. But we also have a responsibility to use that in a responsible way. And this is not a new challenge, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Previous generations have faced similar dilemmas, because I am not going to stand here and minimise the emergency that we face from illegal migration, or minimise the challenge that the entire West faces from the mass migration of people who might seek a better life, who are either fleeing war-torn countries or coming for economic reasons. It's an unprecedented challenge for all Western democracies. But challenges like that have been faced in the past. When we were at war, we had to make very difficult decisions in this Parliament to make sure that we struck the right constitutional balance between defending these islands against dictatorship, but not in a way that defended us and protected us out of our very freedoms. Our very liberty itself is at stake. And the way in which we legislate has to be responsible and has to be in line with that respect for our fundamental freedoms. And as my Right Honourable learned friend, the member for Torridge and West Devon, said, there is a fundamental truth here that we cannot avoid. And that is, if this bill is amended to create an utter, complete ouster from any individual-based challenge, then that goes beyond the parameters of reasonableness and into the sort of legislation that inevitably sets up a fist fight, not with international courts, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but with our very own courts themselves. And I'll give way to my...
There we are. So what he's talking about is the way this law sets up a precedent for tyranny. And we may have very good reasons for not liking migrants coming here in large numbers. He talks about a global problem, and I think a global problem should be dealt with on a global basis. He talks about a choice between people who are fleeing war and people who are looking for a better economic life. The choice isn't as clear as that, as he well knows. There are plenty of people who are looking for asylum who have been persecuted in their own country by their own governments. That's not about a war, that's about oppression for various reasons, whether this is because of their religion, their culture, their sexuality, whatever. And there are good grounds for granting asylum in the UK for people who are in that position. But he is absolutely right that precedent is being set here, that in future, if Parliament, if a particular government, a particular colour of government doesn't like a particular group of people or doesn't like a particular thing, it can legislate to say that that group, that thing, is wrong, whether it is whether the courts believe so or not. It can legislate to ignore the courts. Now that is the most appalling statement, and it was already started by Suella Braverman with her championing of this idea of the lefty lawyers. This is absurd. She knows it, and today we've heard a senior barrister call it out, and not before time. But I don't know whether his words will have a serious effect. I'm afraid this is, as I said a week ago or so, the end game for Rishi Sunak and probably for the Conservative Party.